Good morning, everybody. And I think we are slowly starting to shift from a very big and important topic. Very big and important topic to another big and important topic. You have been talking and addressing the crucial issue of external security for Poland and for the European Union. But of course, this is only part of our mission as Social Democrats. We cannot abandon the important fight of delivering on internal security for the Union. This is the moment in which, if we step up our efforts to build a stronger unity and protection vis-à-vis external threats, we also need to showcase leadership for the quality of life of our European people here at home. I have to ask you, as I am about to invite on stage the Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Technology, Tomasz Lewandowski, I have to ask all of you to calm down, have a seat, and bear with us 1 minute. We have an important topic to address, and a good introduction. I take the freedom to partly change the schedule to use the speech of Irene Tinagli that we have in a video message as a sort of introduction to this topic before giving the floor to the Deputy Minister, so the people will probably calm down and we will speak with less noise. As you know, as progressive forces, we have been able to push the housing issue at the forefront of local, national, and now European action. Now we are bound to have some, I would say, responsibility. But perhaps let me directly ask colleagues to plug in the video of the member of the European Parliament, Irene Tinagli. She has been the chair of the Economic Committee at the European Parliament, but now she's the chair of the freshly created Housing Committee. So even the European Parliament, not a lot of competences, but a clear priority. Irene Tinagli first as a sort of scene setting, and then we go to the leader of housing policy in this country, Tomasz Lewandowski.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this event, and apologies for not being able to be there with you, but I just would like to send you a little contribution on what are we doing in the European Parliament concerning the emergency, the housing crisis. So, as you know, we have created a new committee, a special committee on housing. And the idea of this committee is to be able to analyze, understand the problem all across Europe, because as of now we still don't have a clear picture of everything that is happening in the different member states. We have aggregate data, we have some statistics, we have some experiences of citizens that are telling us they cannot afford anymore, not only to buy but even to rent apartments and houses in certain areas and certain cities. But we need to understand more first. So we need more homogeneous data, we need to collect experiences, we need to understand the root causes of these problems, because of course behind the numbers there might be very different situations, very different problems that need to be understood, and then we need also to explore possible solutions to see what it's been done in certain places that has worked, that could work in other places as well. And finally, we have to identify what pieces of the solution can be delivered, can be provided for by the European Union. So in terms of, first of all, of course, financing, financial instruments, providing funds or guarantees or supporting the crowding of private investments with the specific financial instruments, involving all the stakeholders, not only banks, like European Bank for Investments, for example. So this is part of the possible solutions on which we will be working, so providing ideas on how to leverage existing and future European funds, but also trying to understand if there is something that we could or should do also in terms of regulation, because it's possible that certain aspects of the market are not working properly, and there might be the need to intervene, whether it is, I don't know, intervening, we will discuss, for example, if changing a little bit or making more flexibility in the state aid rules could provide better tools for governments and administrators, or, for example, internal market. So there are many different avenues of possible solutions. So the purpose of the committee is to explore them along with analyzing the problems. So we are at the very beginning, so any inputs is welcome, and so I hope that I'm sure that today you will provide interesting debate and possible inputs to this conversation.
So, as you've heard, we have a mandate to provide input for the European Parliament on this, and I'm extremely happy to have with us also Marit May, the head of delegation of the PDVDA to the S&D group. But first and foremost, let's invite on stage and on the podium Tomasz Lewandowski, Deputy Minister for Economic Development and Technology here in Poland. Dear Tomasz, I think we are in this magnificent location in which we can directly monitor the development of the housing sector in Poland. It is challenging. I know that you are already setting a new course of action. So basically from us, we have to learn inputs on the good things that have been done here in Poland, but also how you see the integration between the difficult nuts to crack, making the difference at the local, national, at European level in a coordinated fashion. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for this introduction. I would like to thank organizers. Thank you for giving us the space to share with you our experience, our reflections and thoughts about the situation right now and the situation where we want to be in 20 or 50 years, because this is the kind of a time perspective we've been talking about. Now, I was very happy to hear what Irene said, namely that the starting point to create programs and to assign various tools is the right situation diagnosis, and it will vary depending on the member state. And based on this particular diagnosis, we will be developing the right tools, financial tools and subsidies and organizational tools, which will allow us to improve the situation in terms of housing. So what I will try to do very briefly is to talk about this diagnosis, about where we are right now in Poland, and about the target group of our programs. I also want to mention how we want to improve the access to housing in Poland and what tools we want to use. So the situation is drastically different to the ones we had 25, 30 years ago. And basically you can see that in all EU member states. Now, when we discuss housing, we do not exclusively discuss homelessness, or at least it's not our main focus. And we do not link housing to social security. Given this drastic rise in the price of housing and monthly fees of having an apartment. Well, we've been wondering and talking about this target group. So this diagnosis at various levels is very important for one simple reason. Well, you cannot have a good housing program from the level of the country for all the regions. It will not be effective if you do it that way. And I'm happy to hear from you about that, from our panelists. But I believe this is something that we can agree on. And if yes, then it seems clear that you also cannot have one solution for all the regions. And the reason for that is that the starting point is different, and conferences like this one are a perfect opportunity to talk also during breaks, as we had this discussion with the panelists today. For example, in Austria, this public quasi-housing resources are as high as 50%, and in Poland it's 5%. So these are completely different priorities, different tools that can be applied to increase access, and also from the perspective of preparing European programs. In order for these programs to be effective, you have to bear that in mind. Now, in Poland, a vast majority of housing needs are met not through public housing, but private housing. No, most of these apartments are in a bad technical state, so you rather own an apartment. You do not rent it from the state. This causes a lot of problems. For example, in terms of flexibility. So older people have big apartments because this is what they had needed for a family of 5 or 6 people. And now in this big apartment, you have an elderly couple or even one person, and it's a huge problem. Firstly, because of the costs of living, you have a lot of fees for such a big apartment. But there is another reason for it, is that these are usually old apartments. And you have to pay a lot of fees, but also utilities. It costs you a lot to heat, to have to pay for the electrical energy. So in Poland, what we want to do first and foremost is to broaden this offer of public housing. The kind that will be stable, so that when you enter the housing market, you know you can live in this public apartment as long as you want to, even until the end of your life, that you have this stability. If you change your life plans, if you want to move to a different city, for example, to pursue their careers, they will be able to do. They will not be bound by having a mortgage or their own apartment in the specific cities. This is very important also for economic development and for life as such. Now, I asked one question in the beginning, and I hope our speakers will also mention that. Who will these programs be dedicated to? And 35% of all Polish families are in the so-called gap, which means they earn too much to qualify for public aid that is offered by local governments. They are a little bit too rich for that. Yes, they are too rich for that, but they are too poor for the private market. So they are too poor to get a mortgage, for example, for an apartment, but also they are too poor to rent, because if you have to spend 50% of your disposable income on renting your own place, well, if you are a young family, you cannot travel, or you do not have money for any cultural activities. it simply deprives you to some extent of this joy of life. And in this situation, it's doubtful whether they would be willing to have children, whether they would be willing to pursue any kind of activities. So it is my conviction is that we should address the needs of these people who are in this gap. Of course, we need to support this public housing, but there are over 4 million Polish families in Poland who can not afford it to function normally. How can we do that? Firstly, public renting, and then you can involve a number of public entities. And we're very happy that we have many cooperatives, over 3,600 such cooperatives, over 300 communal companies that are dedicated to social housing. And they offer help to these people who are in this gap, in this limbo. And what we lack are consistent programs, multi-annual programs of building constructing public housing. This is what we've been trying to do, and we've been successful to some extent because thanks to the left being in the Polish government, we will spend this year for social housing 2.5 billion housing and around 5 billion in total for housing as such. And this is the kind of an amount that we are not ashamed of. So constructing and building new apartments is one thing. And of course, it's quite spectacular if you have new blocks of apartments that are made available. But also, it's about using what we already have, both in the public and private sphere. So the left has been trying to build certain IT systems in order to get knowledge about these empty buildings that we have. Because in order to pursue this wise and consistent housing policy, you need to have this knowledge. Is it better in this particular region or city to build new houses or apartments, or to renovate the old ones and to pay, for example, part of the monthly rent, just to use the resources that we have? And we've also been trying to expand the agencies at the local level, social renting agencies. They are somewhere in between the public actor and the private entity, so they can take on this intermediary role. Thanks to using these agencies, you can get the monthly rent that will be lower than on the private market. So we need to have some synergy between these programs that have been announced by the European Commission. And you need that money to building new apartments, but also to use the existing ones, and also to supplementing this rental fee. And one more thing that I would like to raise: to what extent, well, at the level of the European Commission, maybe we could reflect on social housing being excluded from this state aid regime. Because these entities that I have just mentioned, active in the social housing, if these entities, if they want to apply for any grant from the local government, or if they want to get any real estate from the local government, they are treated like businesses, like enterprises which sell on the private market and which can potentially, tilt the balance on the private market. So there are many restrictions and many obligations in terms of conveying information, for example, the same ones that apply to the state aid. This makes the system very inflexible. And consequently, these entities or cooperatives that manage the whole area, they are not effective in terms of organization, economics, etc. So I believe that between the European Commission and the national authorities, this should also be a topic to discuss, and this will definitely improve the situation in terms of housing. And now, at the very end, I also would like to hear from you what you think about that. That goes for Poland, but also for other guests. Well, I would be very much interested to hear about the discussion on how we can, what is your experience maybe, what are your thoughts, how can we convince the society to this belief that ownership is not sacred, that if you own something, you have certain obligations, that the state, if you pursue this wise, progressive housing policy, you can, they can limit this right. They can impose taxes. If you have this idea that you don't want to rent an apartment, you keep it empty. Well, this is a question that we as a society as a whole need to answer in order to improve the accessibility of housing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Deputy Minister. It was a fascinating plan, and thanks also for bringing some input, clear and concrete, on what we can tell the European Commission and our colleagues in Brussels to keep the fight for an impactful and meaningful European plan on housing that delivers value at the local, at the national level. But this is the moment in which maybe we attempt to give some partial responses to your question as well. Thanks for you for ending your speech into a question for us. We try to respond collectively, and this is why collectively we will have this discussion with representatives from different places in Europe. I'm very glad to have such a fantastic panel, and I will need your help, of all of you, to clap your hands for each one of them, starting from State Secretary Michaela Schmidt, representative from the freshly elected government of Austria. So she has a member of the SPO Presidium. When we invited her, she was a member of the parliament. And now, thanks to successful negotiation, we are very happy to have you here as State Secretary for Housing, Art, Culture, and Media and Sport. Thanks a lot for bringing the Austrian experience. I'm also happy to invite on stage Krzysztof Kukucki, the president of Włocławek. Thank you. Please join us. Then we have with us Grzegorz Petriuszuk, mayor of Bielany. Thank you, Gregor. Among other things, also you can. It's our somehow pride to have you as Person of the Year, Progressive Figure of the Year in 2023 for what you have done. Outstanding contribution on putting into practice the value of welcoming and solidarity vis-à-vis the Hungarian refugees. Thanks for that. Very happy to have here Marit Mai, MEP and chair of the Dutch delegation to the SD group. And last but not least is proximity, my geographical proximity. I'm Italian, and I invite on stage my counterpart on the other side of the Mediterranean, Mar Jiménez Carreté, that for the city of Barcelona, she's the Commissioner for European Affairs, and she's leading a big campaign, mayor campaign for housing. So, as you see, we have a lot of different countries represented, because this issue, someone on the right wing said, is not a European issue. Europe should not say anything on this because there are little competences, but it's a fundamental European issue because housing is a problem everywhere. And if it is a problem everywhere, it is a problem for the progressive family. It's a problem we have to solve. So, Michael, I give the floor to you directly with microphone number 6 for your first introduction.
Yeah, thank you. It's truly a pleasure to be here in my new capacity as State Secretary of Vice Chancellor Andreas Babler. And yeah, as you already know, we managed to form a coalition with the Austrian People's Party and the Liberal Party, and thus avoiding a government led by a far-right Chancellor, Herbert Kickl, and most importantly, forming a government with a strong social democratic signature. And I'm also happy to speak on the subject of affordable housing, because it has, in Austria, historically been an important part of our policy, but also because measures on affordable housing and rent control were top priorities in the coalition negotiations for the newly formed government. And we all know that during the inflation crisis, housing cost burden on households has increased significantly in many European countries, also in Austria, in recent years. And it has a major impact of the quality of life of our citizens. Affordable housing is in short supply, especially in the growing cities and regions. And the developments have brought housing policy back on the center of public debate, also in Austria, in the last years. And I think it's not just a question of whether governments should intervene, but also which instruments are best used to influence the housing market. For example, the provision of social housing, like we have in Vienna, the regulation of rents, like we did in the last days, or the promotion of home ownership, which is also an instrument we used in Austria in a lot of regions. And I think as Social Democrats, we have the need to find the right mix of instruments to provide affordable and good quality housing. And to illustrate these points, I would like to talk about the Austrian experience. In Austria, the average price of a new apartment is about 5,000 euro per square meter. In Italy, it's 2,000. In France, I think it's 4,500. So Austria comes out of top when it comes to the average price of buying a new home. But these are only average prices. And if you break the features down, you will see that although other countries have lower average prices, the difference between rural and urban areas are huge. And it's not the case in Austria. So newly financed flats in some major European cities cost considerably more than in Vienna. We have in Vienna, you pay about 6,000 euro per square meter, and it's about 7,000 in Barcelona, it's 8,000 in Amsterdam, and it's 10,000 in Munich, so it's double the price we have in Vienna. But looking at Vienna, our capital is a city of tenants. About 80% of all people in Vienna are renters. So the city has a strong tradition, more than 100 years, of social housing, dating back to the early days of the First Republic, and the tradition was maintained over the last 100 years. And as a result, almost 2/3 of the city population lives in social housing or in apartments owned by housing cooperatives, which are also subsidized by the city. We have the same situation a bit less in cities like Linz or Graz, where more than half of the people live in social housing. So I think that's one answer to the question you raised. In Austria, sozusagen, social housing goes in the middle class, and it's not just something for the low-income class. So I think you need to earn more than 6,000 euros to not contribute to the social housing program. And we also have in Vienna in Austria, a rent-regulated sector, mostly older buildings, so buildings that are older that are built before 1980. And that ensures affordable housing, of course, but I think it's also an important tool to avoid gentrification and the creation of marginalized areas. So we have achieved a good social mix in the whole city. And these systems keep average rents down to 10 euros per square meter. In Linz, it's about 11 euros. In Salzburg, it's a bit more, but still, it's not comparable to cities like London or Paris, where you have an average of 33 or 35 euros. So it's more than 3 times higher than in Vienna. However, in Austria, the situation as a whole was worse in the inflation crisis, as rents have risen by up to 25% in the last 4 years, contributing significantly to the inflation spiral we have in the last years. And for this reason, we had this priority of housing and rents in the negotiation for the new federal government. And on the 3rd day of the new government, the Council of Ministers took the first important decision on this matter, and we have introduced a rent freeze for 2025, which will save tenants about 140 million euros a year. As rents would have risen in April by, I think, 3 or 4%. And of course, the rent freeze makes life more affordable. And we will continue to freeze the rents in 2026, where rents will be allowed to increase by just 1% and 2% in the year 2027. And after that, we have a rent freeze 3% and half the inflation if it's higher than 3%. So we try to fix this problem with the inflation spiral we had in the last 3 years. To counter the trend in housing, we have a package of measures to support the construction sector in the next years. We have the goal to harmonize tenancy law that has been a problem in Austria since 20 years, and to improve legal certainty for tenants and landlords. And it is also agreed, that was the idea of the People Party, that we provide young people and families with financing options for the purchase of property. So that's also a goal. And generally to make the purchase of property easier and more efficient. We have a lot of other plans in the pipeline, but I think there's not enough time to go into detail. But I think there's one message I would like to give you as a final remark. Leaving the housing market to the private sector, I think, is not an effective strategy. And I think a good supply of a quality of housing is only possible with a long-term housing policy. It's nothing you can achieve in a short-term idea of 1 or 2 years. And I think all studies show this clear in black and white. And I think cities in Austria and Europe should develop a really good housing policy for the next 10, 20 years. And we are all called upon here to continue to do everything in our power to improve the situation for our citizens. Thank you very much.
In the spirit of keeping our interpreters entertained, let's switch and go with perhaps on the other side of the panel to President Kukuczki. We have heard quite a big message on the role of the state and the public sector and civil society as well as social economy into housing. Vis-à-vis the private sector profit-based approach. So maybe your point on this, and if you can as well in the negotiation, in the political talks, if you can also expand maybe on who are our adversaries here. So what are the difficulties politically in advancing a housing, a meaningful housing? What are the arguments? Who is actually running against us?
Deweloperzy I banki.
It's the construction sector and the banks. That's the adversary. That's who is in our way. Or maybe let me start on a different note. Poland is vastly different from Austria. It's quite different in many ways. Over the last 30 years, just over the last 30 years, we have been living in a country which there's a sort of dogma around this fairy tale being sold to people, telling them if you want safe housing, if you want housing safety, you need to go and buy a flat or a house on the private market. You need to pay a construction company. And if you don't have enough money, and most people don't have enough in cash to simply go and buy a flat, then you need to visit a bank, and of course the bank will give you a loan. In the end, you will pay twice as much for the flat because the loan itself costs the same as the flat. And that has been going on for the last 30 years in Poland. Very rarely were there any programs that were supposed to help people purchase, again, flats from construction companies. It was mostly banks who benefited from these programs. So if we're looking for an adversary today, an obstacle, it's certainly those entities that that can lose out should any changes be introduced. In the most recent campaign in the run-up to the previous elections, there was just one community, the left, that had a different message than all the other parties. All the other parties, except for the left, were essentially trying to go for safe loans, 1.5%, 1%, 0%. The whole idea was for developers, for construction companies and banks to benefit. And that needs to be emphasized. The experience of the previous government, which introduced so-called safe loans with 2%, showed that housing became less accessible, in fact, to Poles. Housing prices simply exploded. They went up hugely, although that's not to be compared to a city like Vienna, obviously, at least where I live. But comparing the last 5 years, 10 years don't even qualify for a comparison. There have been gigantic shifts. And as a result, like Minister Lewandowski said, 35, even up to 40% of Polish families find themselves within a rental gap. Most of these families simply don't have a flat. And if they do, often the flat is not really suited to their needs. It's too small. Polish families have no way of changing this. But these opportunities are slowly appearing, and it's thanks to Minister Lewandowski. That needs to be emphasized. Last week, the Polish government gave its approval to a law that is supposed to change the situation in Poland. And that is very good news. In fact, it's so good if, like before the elections, aside from the left, of course, everybody was trying to help banks and developers. After this draft law gained the approval of the government, everybody wanted to take credit for this law, even though we had already given all those ideas prior to the parliamentary elections. So what will these changes be about? Essentially, we will be supporting local governments in building houses and flats to be rented cheaply, like you mentioned in Vienna. We want to have this all over the country. So for 30 years, local governments shied away from housing and housing policy. But right now, they are increasingly becoming aware that it's a very good way of implementing more policies, other policies. And I think this is very important. One important point, Europe is dying. Demographically, we're really dropping at a high speed. And of course, there's a formula to reverse this or to alleviate this problem, but we often trivialize it. In Poland in 2023, 111,000 citizens less were born than died. Last year, the gap was 150,000. So fewer babies born versus people dying. Moreover, 60% of young Poles of both sexes state that their main difficulty in making a decision to have a child is not having housing safety. So we need to be aware of demographics, of housing policy, of healthcare. We need to approach these areas as sort of mutually joined parts. Last year, I had the pleasure of taking part in a meeting in Liège where 20-something ministers responsible for housing met and talked about what to do at the EU level to make housing policy a priority, a main, one of the major topics in public debates. And there was vast agreement there that it's important. And just as we were able to build roads and highways across the EU, and right now we're transforming our railway lines, at least in Poland we are, but I think this is happening all over Europe as well. In the same fashion, we can start implementing programs to help people have accessible housing. Because your typical Kowalski or Smith or, you know, your typical European family doesn't have to own the place where they live. This need for ownership is artificial. It was created, fueled by banks and by construction companies. So, and I see this in Włocławek.
Under the previous mandate, we bought 1,500 apartments, and we really pushed the liberals to do that with us. And they were saying, come on, don't worry, no one will be willing to do that. Okay, we'll do that for you because it's impossible to govern with you, but it will not work. That's what they said. In the end, we finished the first stage, second, third, a few thousand apartments in a city like Włocławek, you know. So just to give you the picture, in 5 years in Poland, we should have 10,000 and what you had in Warsaw was 1,000, okay? It's not just to blame anyone. It's just to show you the scale of this investment in public housing in Włocławek. I know I'm running out of time, so I just want to say that I know we need this policy at the state levels because some funds need to be guaranteed. And local governments are really, really willing to start building houses. We have this fund in Poland. Before Lewandowski's reform, there was this ceiling of 1 billion annually. But Polish local governments submitted applications for the amount that was a few times higher, which shows that local governors, well, their mindset has changed significantly because they want to build this public housing for cheap rents for their citizens. Thank you.
President Kukucki, and thanks a lot for actually underlying the social and security value of housing in the face of family planning and you know, general security of our people. Let me bring to the conversation the Netherlands and Spain, maybe with the same question to MEP May and to Commissioner Jiménez Carrete. Maybe we can start with you, MEP. Of course, you can, both of you can respond on the different suggestions that we have heard. But I have a very easy question as well to address, to try to borrow your mind. We have been able to push housing at the top of the agenda locally, nationally, and at the European Union level. From our viewpoint at FEPS, now we have somehow 3 things to do. One, as the panel that we see here, we have to deliver. Secondly, we have to coordinate the local, the national, and the European way. And third, we have to transform this in real electoral support. Not only doing, but showcasing and getting people behind us, maybe more than we have been able to do in the recent past. The question is easy, how to do that?
Thank you for the very easy question. Thank you for the invitation. I think the answer is maybe, as you also know, not so simple. I look around here and I see the beautiful city of Warsaw and also all the buildings that are taking place here. But I also, when I was sitting here and listening to the first panel, I think there is such a big link between what was said in the first panel and what we are talking about right now. In the first panel, we were talking about national and European security, about international solidarity from the European perspective, from our constituents. And this solidarity can only take place if people have a feeling that their government is also there for them. And the top one worry that people in the Netherlands have right now is housing. And if constituents, if voters in the Netherlands, I think also in other countries, do not have a feeling that their government is delivering for them, their government is delivering for them for their housing, as the previous speaker said, younger people that want to maybe live on themselves, have a family, but feel that this is being distorted because the housing is not available, then the international solidarity is also difficult to come by. So I think we have to make that link and make sure that we also bring this there for our young people and for all the people in our society. Because we see that many people, I think 10 to 15% of the people pay more than 40% of their monthly income on housing, and this is rent or the interest on mortgage. Whereas actually we say in the Netherlands that it should be a maximum of 30%. So many more pay more than that maximum of 30%, and that's everyone. You know, it's your neighbor, it's maybe your child, it's someone you meet in the supermarket. Many people have this very big burden, and I think if we want to make sure that we take away this burden, we have to look at the problems in the housing market. And some of them have been mentioned by Vice Minister Schmid. Also, Deputy Minister Lewandowski had a very, I think, good introduction on some of those problems that we see. The main problem that we, from the European perspective, of course, have to look at is what can we do within the European Union. And we often approach the European Union as a market. So we also approach the housing problem as a market. And I think here is one of the main elements of the problem. It's the financialization of the housing market. The real estate companies are making lots of money, are making lots of, the way that they come into the housing market is not a social way, it's a way to make profit. It's a profit-making machine for them. And we also see, of course, there is this other problem, but I think Mar will talk about it more, about short-term rentals in the housing market. So if we look at what we can do from the European perspective, one of the problems that you addressed, Minister Lewandowski, was the state aid and the rules for state aid. This is something that is also an issue in the Netherlands when we start looking at building social housing. How can we do this? I think the second issue that is really very important is counteract on this financialization. Housing is too much of a market, and the housing stock is being sold to the highest bidder. It's being sold to the highest bidder outside of the Netherlands, outside of the European Union. Some individuals in the city of Amsterdam own more than 500 houses by themselves. And these are individuals just earning money. But what is behind it? This is also difficult. I think we need more transparency. Behind it are big investors from outside of the European Union that are using our market to earn money. So I think we need more transparency on that to make sure that we know who this final owner is and what the financial agreement is. But we also need more transparency on our rental agreements. so that the individual who signs the rent knows where this comes from and knows how the price is defined. How did you have, I think in Austria, this was a very good example, have a very good breakdown on what the increase of rent, for example, can be. In some of our countries in the European Union, we don't have that. And an owner can easily just put another 10 or 15% on the rent. We need to have more transparency on those rental agreements as well. And I think we need to have, maybe we started doing this in the Netherlands, to have a commission that works on rental disputes. So if there's a dispute between the owner and the person that rents the house, how can we make sure that this person also has the right, because if the owner has this big company behind him or her, that the right of the tenant is being respected. And I think finally one of the issues that we have to do, and we can try and do this also in the European Union, because it's something that is there in many of our countries and in many of our cities, is this abusive short-term rental, where people buy an apartment not to live in it, but to use it for, actually as a hotel, for tourism. So that's also something that it destroys the cohesion in the city. In some cities, in the city of Amsterdam, 1 in 9 apartments is owned by someone who wants to use it for short-term rental. I think we have comparable cities in Europe where this is happening. And this breaks down also our social cohesion. I think your words sounded so good, Vice Minister Schmid, when you said, when we want to find a solution for the housing market, we should not leave it to the private sector. Because the private sector is in it for their profit, often for the short-term profit. And we are in it because we want people to have a house, because let's not forget it, we haven't mentioned it yet, but housing and having a house, a roof over your head, is a human right. So let's make sure that not only these almost 1 million people in Europe that do not have a home, that are homeless, get a home, but also all those other people that are looking for a home with low or middle income insecurities, get this roof over their head. Thank you very much.
Working? Yeah. I would like to start thanking the organizers, FEBS, Everstiftung, Amicae Europe, Amicus Europae, for organizing this panel, because it has mentioned very little the social unrest till now. We are mentioning it here with this panel, but actually when we are discussing about security, if we have social unrest in our neighborhoods, and if we have people fed up of politicians or institutions, then we have a big threat. So it surprised me when we focus only, and I wouldn't say it because I'm Spanish, because I'm pretty aware of what's happening here, and I think I pretty understand what the threat from Russia and neglect, the indifference, let's say, of Trump means for Poland and for Polish people. I totally understand that you are scared. I would be scared as well. But at the same time, I understand that in our cities and towns, we have a big problem that it's undermining democracy and also the European project. Because a lot of people, it's feeling that the institutions or the European problem, it's not working for them. It doesn't bring solutions to them. So this is why we need to consider the social unrest and the housing problem when talking about prosperity and a secure Europe. Because, you know, we have reacted very fast from Trump decisions, the Putin, and so on. We have a huge plan to defend Europe, which is called ReArm, not Defense Europe or Sovereign Europe or whatever. But the housing plan won't be announced till the beginning of 2026, okay? So in our cities, we have a lot of citizens not able to rent a flat because there's a market failure, but we will delay and wait, because I understand that the European Union hasn't tackled this issue previously, till 2026 to address this. This is why from 15 cities of Europe, we have built up a coalition, an initiative, we call it Mayors for Housing. It started with discussions with the mayor of Barcelona, Rome, Bologna, and now we have 15 cities that had a meeting 3 weeks ago in Brussels with the Vice President of the Commission and also Teresa Rivera and also the Commissioner of Housing, because we understand this matters to our citizens and it's an urgent matter. So what we are doing is bringing to the Commission several solutions and proposals. In May, we will present these mayors an action plan with proposals. Because, you know, if 40% of income of our citizens is devoted to housing, this is also an economic problem because there is less liquidity to make the economy grow and work. And it's also affecting our basic services. Key workers are not able to live in our cities or to work in our cities. You know, Leta mentioned the right to stay. What is this in our Europe? And what we ask, let me say, in this coalition we have Warsaw, Budapest. Now Zagreb also join us. And one of the things that we are asking is to apply the exemption clause, the escape clause, the same way that will be applied to defense to housing. When we were discussing this, I asked my team to call Warsaw and the mayor of Warsaw. This is a coalition of different mayors, different parties across Europe: Amsterdam, Barcelona, Budapest, Rome, Bologna, Athens, 15 cities. I wanted to check if the mayor of Warsaw was comfortable with this, because I understand the reality. It's pretty different in the other part of the Pyrenees. And he agreed to include this demand to apply the escape clause to housing as it will be done to defense. It's one of the demands that we have. We also will present proposal programs, subsidies, loans, a regulation that gives stability to tenants, and also will ask for a fast-track funds directly for cities. I just will go very briefly what we have done in Barcelona. Obviously, Vienna is a unique example. Most cities in Europe, we have to struggle with this. What have we done? We have applied the price caps in our rentals. We have declared a tension zone, Barcelona and other cities. It means that the social function of housing is not respected. So we are putting these price caps. And I must say, in the last year, the prices have fallen 6.4%, which is good. It's a starting point, but it's not enough. We have announced as well that in 2028, there won't be any Airbnb apartment in Barcelona. 0. Why? Because Catalan law that was brought to the court by the EPP allows us, turns the Airbnb short-term rentals into economic activity in which you are giving economic license to the ones that are holding this economic activity. These economic licenses will have to be renewed in 2028, and our decision is to renew 0 licenses. So, just in 1 second, let's say, 10,000 units will be back to the market, will be back to the social function of housing. Just to have the numbers in mind, every year we build from the public sector, we aim to build 1,000 units, which means 10 years of building apartments, units of housing in Barcelona. What we are doing is, to sum up, it's to trying to guarantee with all our tools the social function of housing. And to end up, I don't want to extend a lot, for me it's very important, the narrative, I mentioned it yesterday, because we have to understand that this security is a complex issue, but we might have to make it in simple messages. And if these simple messages, we are only talking about arms, we are lost. It's not our frame. The right is stronger here. The far right is stronger here. And if we don't tackle the social unrest, the far right will win, and also Russia, because Russia is using the social unrest to feed the far right and to go against the European project. So we have to talk to our citizens. tell them that their problems matter to us, and these problems are the external threat, obviously, but also the internal threat that we have. If we understand that the cost of life increases, it's as important as is the external threat, I think we have a lot to say and a lot to win in our streets and with our fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Commissioner Jimenez Carrete. Now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mayor Pietruchuk. From you, of course, as well, maybe a comment on the multi-level governance. So from the struggle at the municipality level in dealing with European funds, national laws, and international problems. And maybe also, I think you are very well placed to give your input on how to reconcile this approach to security that has to be both external and internal.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a very complex problem indeed. And our Polish reality differs from the reality in Western countries. You can see that on the example of what Minister Lewandowski said or Mayor Kukucki. So private investors and developers, they got all the private initiative 25 years ago. They have conquered the housing market. And it's the most profitable part of the Polish business. One of the previous speakers has mentioned that prices differ, that it's 5,000 euros per square meter in Vienna. Well, it's the same in my district, in Bielany, but we don't earn as much as citizens in Vienna. But it shows you how much you can earn on the housing market and how easy it is to get into the citizens' money. And Mr. Kukucki has said that it's mainly banks that earn on that. And this has very serious consequences for the whole of the country, because we've been facing what many politicians fail to notice, this demographic collapse, because we have 1.1 children a child per couple, so no replacement of generations, and it's very close to 1, so it's the worst case scenario for economic and social reasons.
Polska
because there are fewer and fewer Poles. And so right now, for instance, my neighborhood, my district, which has 150,000 residents in Warsaw, I have almost 50,000 seniors and only a dozen or so thousand children. It's becoming a very visible problem in the kindergartens, in the preschool care facilities. We used to have a couple of thousand. We currently have 1,000. Next year, we're bringing it down to, it's going to be 750. The preschool facilities are becoming empty, and we see this all across the country to different degrees. And the lack of affordable housing is one of the reasons why Poles don't want to have children. If we don't have children, the whole system of education will need to undergo a huge reform, because we won't need so many teachers, because there will be nobody to teach. And this all has economic consequences down the road. And Mr. Kukucki, Mr. Lewandowski, what they did, thanks to what they did for the first time in the last 20 years, we have a law that will give Poles affordable housing. If a young Pole is to pay 1 million zlotys for a 50-meter apartment in Warsaw, and then, do all the work inside as well, they will have to be repaying this loan for the next 40 years. They'll pay twice as much as what the apartment cost. Nobody will be able to get a loan if you're earning an average salary. And secondly, it's like a modern type of slavery, economic slavery. Because this person won't be able to make any radical changes to their lives, even in the professional arena, because at the back of their heads, they'll always be thinking, I need to pay my next monthly installment for the loan. And much of that installment will be interest. So it is a very smart but catastrophic way of stripping young Poles, taking away their opportunities. Looking at how Warsaw is changing, let me give you the example of the Śródmieście district. This is the center of town. Over the last 5 years, it lost 37,000 residents. It dropped below 100,000 residents, where several kindergartens have needed to wind down their operations. So say they have 30 or 40 children now. The facility had been built for 150 or 200. Those kindergartens will gradually be shut down because there are no children. And the flats in that district are mostly being rented out on a short-term basis through things like Airbnb to tourists. And here the Revenue Office recently announced that they will go and make sure how many flats operate like this in the center of Warsaw. Many flats are purchased by funds, and it's like these funds, these companies that rent the flats rather than private individuals, and that also takes away revenue from the state. So the flats are being bought out. Whereas Warsaw has 100,000 flats at its disposal, and we're not able to provide those to those in need. I have 6,000 flats, social flats in Bielany, and we're able to put 400 families in those flats per year. But we need the district to grow. We need more people to live there because we're losing residents.
I would have myself plenty of questions, but I think it would be fair to try to give you the option of ask questions, given that you have been listening for over 1 hour. I have a mic as well. We can pass it in case you have some burning question. Otherwise, I go with mine. But if you have something to raise, I think we can take up to 3 top.
Okay, my question is related to the private sector. Recently,
Number of the mic? Number 6.
my question is related to the private sector. Recently, the UK has seen a sharp increase in American companies, trillion-dollar companies that have been buying a big share of living houses, like houses for living, usually used by poorer people. How can we make sure that this doesn't set a precedent for the rest of the European Union and Europe in general?
Thank you. Do we have another one? There's one. And then I have add one of mine, and then we go to you. 2 minutes each, max. So start planning on 2 minutes max.
Dzień dobry, chciałbym zadać.
I have a question regarding short-term rentals. How can Europe and Poland deal with this? Because we keep hearing about this topic giving rise to very heated debates, like in Barcelona. And Polish city centers, where cities like Krakow, there are buildings in the center of Krakow where nobody lives on a permanent basis anymore because 100% of the flats are in Airbnb or on Booking.com. So what sort of legal solutions could be introduced on the European level or on the national level? Also, how do we revitalize city centers, like in Krakow and Florence and other cities across Europe? How do we restore these city centers to regular residents? Can we do this? Is it up to us? Or maybe what sort of effect would it have on the city's economy? Or maybe we should reconcile ourselves to the fact that city centers should only be for services and tourism rather than for regular residents. What sort of strategy should we adopt?
To the mix, a point on still housing, but at the same time, it's a social investment. In the vast majority of the study that we see now on the EU spending, we feature clearly the need to address students, student dorms, and retirement homes. So for the elderly and the students, do we have something specific to say, some additional measures? Because there's not only the market and social housing, perhaps we need some additional tools. Floor to you.
Okay. Maybe just begin from an economical point of view. You have to consider that the demand for housing is quite inelastic. And the older people get, the more inelastic it is. So there's just no way that you need to control the house prices via the supply side of the market, or you have to do price caps. I think there is no other possibility in the bigger picture. So that's the picture. Then there is the question how to make it, and I think there's a lot of different methods you can use. I think on the most effective way is to have a huge share of public housing, because that will drive all prices down. The price for newly financed, the price for ownership, everything is going down if you have a huge share of public housing. But if you don't have it, you need to make other methods in the short run. But I think the long-term goal must be this highly share of public housing. In the short term, we have we have strict rules in Austria concerning empty flats or concerning short-term rents. It's just not allowed. So if you buy something in the center or in the cities, you have to live in this flat for yourself. It's just not allowed to not live in it or to sell it for tourism. It's not that easy on a legal way, but that's the main goal. And I think we made it in Vienna, we made it in Salzburg, we made it in Graz. So I think there are ways to do it. And I think you need a tax on empty flats. So we don't do it on the federal level, because it makes no sense to tax an empty flat in a region where no one wants to live. But you have to give the local communities in the city the possibility to tax the empty flats in the cities. It's too low, so we have you need to know it's not. I would like to have a higher tax, but at least we have this tax possibility. It depends on the majors of the cities to set the tax.
Yes, thank you, and very good questions. I think Europe is not just there for legislation. One of the things, of course, we can do with legislation is make sure that these big investors are not investing in our homes. We just need to see how we organize that legislation. Second is, of course, that we can learn from each other. This is what we, within the Housing Committee in the European Parliament, also really want to do, and what our chair also said in the beginning, learn from the good examples of Vienna, of Austria, but also the good examples of Barcelona. And there's also this good example in my own hometown, The Hague, where exactly what you mentioned, Vice Minister Schmid, has been proposed and has also been passed through the local government. If you buy a house, you have to live there. So it's no longer possible to buy a second house and not live there. It was a lot of problem, but in the end, it passed. And I think this is something that we have to look at, because it also brings in your other groups, David. Of course, we need to work for students and young people, and also for the elderly. But there's many people who are no longer students, who are 28, 30. On average, a European has his first individual home, either rent or buy, when they are 28. This used to be much lower, and if it pushes up and up, it also becomes the social problem and the security problem that we mentioned. So, for example, in the European Social Fund, in the cohesion funds that we have within the European Union, there's possibilities to support young workers, working poor, or maybe female-headed households that have it very difficult to sustain. And with this specific policies also from the European Union, we can make sure that this other group of people is also being targeted. Sorry for speaking too fast for the interpreters, but I thought in the because of time it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for giving me the microphone, despite the fact it's so late already. My name is Andreas Stadler. I'm the Austrian ambassador, and I'm here in the first place to assist State Secretary Michaela Schmidt, who you have just heard, and proudly hear what we are doing in Austria about housing. But I think I would like to congratulate here the organizers of this conference for choosing this venue, because I think the genius loci of it shows that there can be responsible construction. It has been done by an Austrian company called Karimpol, who still manages this house. And the owner, who lives here very often, has told me, I have actually organized already several receptions here, that these last floors were not necessary anymore for him to make a profit with the rental of the house. So he wanted to create an event space with 60-meter high ceilings here and 36-meter high ceilings there. So I think in terms of architecture, it's also a very inspiring place, and this is what I wanted to hint to. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We continue with the max 2 minutes each reminder.
Króciutko, jeśli chodzi o
So very briefly, short-term rentals, as you know, we don't have legal solutions to cap it, to halt it right now. And it's a problem because city centers are dying out. People are moving out, like in Warsaw, Krakow, Gdańsk. These cities are currently facing a problem, like in Warsaw, for instance. We have a whole infrastructure. We have kindergartens, schools, medical facilities. All these places were built and are being maintained, but there are no residents. And this problem is going to grow from year to year. As for a related issue, young people who move to Warsaw, say to study, have a hard time renting a flat because the prices are very high, too high for them. And here, thankfully, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, which is also headed by the left, they're going to be building dormitories next to universities, student residences. Those are very necessary. I have 3 universities in my district, and I would really like the students who live there in residence, I would like them to stay once they complete their studies, to stay there, to start a family, to spend their lives there. Right now, the problem is that very few of them will be able to afford a flat, or even their parents won't be able to afford a flat there, even if they take up a loan. That is an important problem that we need to grapple with, and I hope that the government, once this new law goes through, I hope the government continues this trend and will regulate and fix the Polish rental market that requires courage and strength.
About the different questions, for me, what it's key is to consider to go beyond the social housing concept, and now we have to talk about affordable housing. For me, this is key. It's different, you know. I know in Vienna, social housing, it's middle class, it's living in social housing, but with the angle from the whole European cities, we have to talk about affordable housing, and it includes youth, elderly. These students of 28, 30 years old that are not able to have a flat, an apartment. For me, this is key. About these buildings, apartments being bought by rich people. The Spanish government has announced that it will ban this kind of buy-ins, which I think it's very, very powerful, this signal. Just to remember, it's one of the only 3 governments with a prime minister in Europe, so it's important that we send these signals to our citizens. And I wouldn't say that we are resigned to, we accept to lose our city centers. I live in the city center, and I think that there are a wide range of regulations that we can implement. Capping prices, is it working? And it's not affecting the market. There are new contracts as well, but capping prices is, with these price caps, it's working to guarantee the social use of the function of housing. Regulations, like I mentioned with Airbnb, the EPP brought this law to the Constitutional Court, but the court said, beyond the private property, cities have a configuration that it's under threat with these short-term apartments and housing. It's to live in, not to make business with. So we have an opportunity with regulation, and also we have to build, create new units with being innovative. The public sector, communitarian alliances, communitarian and public initiatives, but also we have to build up a partnership with the private sector and just keep building and creating new units, or banning the short term and bringing new units to the market to fix this failure. But there are a lot of measures that can be implemented. So I would be optimistic. It will remain a fight with a lot of economic powers, a fight with big lobbies, Airbnb investing a lot of money in Brussels. But we need to persist and to fight for our citizens and for Europe at the end.
We are ready for the fight. President?
Okej, ja zacznę trochę przewrotnie z Grzegorzem.
And so I've known Grzegorz for a long time, but I will be very open about saying that I'm not that worried about flats being expensive in Warsaw, because people who come to study in Warsaw, well, there are bigger chances that they will come back and live in my town of Włocławek. So just on that note, I hope they will not leave and go abroad, let me put it that way. But on a more serious note, and I have to say that I fully agree with the previous speakers. Of course, there are mechanisms that function in Europe. They do work, and sometimes you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You can just copy the solutions that work in Barcelona, as we've heard, for example, in terms of short term. This is what has been is implemented. You just have to be consistent. Let me just, I do not want to escape these questions, but I want to get back to what Minister Lewan, to Prime Minister Gawkowski said, because it's our panel is part of a greater whole. So we've been talking about security in Europe, and Prime Minister mentioned this courage. And I would like to echo that, because I would like to say that I would like this left family not to only limit security to military solutions. We have to get back to our roots, we have to have a wider horizon, and we have to support these people who have work contracts. We have 15 million people in Poland like that, and it seems that they've been left to their own devices, these people who do not have permanent work contracts. We talk about big business, about small business, but we also have these people who have work contracts, and it is them, they are most interested in this accessible housing. It is them that are interested in free healthcare of good quality. What they want to have is to have this balance between private and professional life. And I think this is where the left community has a work to do, just to build this security and sense of security of an individual, not only in the military sense.
Thank you. So now it works like this. I have to ask you again one big favor. So when I give you the go, I need a 1 minute long round of applause. 1 minute long round of applause for two reasons. First reason is to thank our speaker, starting from Deputy Minister Lewandowski, State Secretary Smith, President Kuczynski, Mayor Pietryczuk, MEP Mai, and Commissioner Jimenez Carrete. That's the first reason for the round of applause. And then the other reason for the round of applause is to welcome on stage my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Ania Petricek. Šripek, sorry, that is Director of Studies, Director of Research and Training at FEPS, and Dr. Ania is also the mastermind of the conference that is gathering here today, so she does deserve a big round of applause. Dr. Šripek.
Dwa skrajne. Masz,